He didn't believe in stories about light at the end of the tunnel, but after dying in his sleep, he found himself in such a tunnel, moving toward a bright light. The last thing he remembered was sleeping in his royal bedchamber. He assumed he, as an influential person, might have been assassinated. Since he didn't wake up, he had to accept what had happened. Expecting angelic choirs, he instead experienced a bright red flash, a deafening sound, and discovered that all he could produce was crying. The clearing voices congratulated a certain Madam and Sir on the birth of a healthy baby. Realizing he had just been reborn as a baby, he called it ridiculous. Reynolds, the proud father of a newborn son, Arthur, immediately began making plans to train the boy in magic, hoping he would become an amplifier like himself. His wife, Alice, a talented emitter healer, impressed him with her abilities during their adventures together. He fondly recalled the days when they hunted mana beasts in the beast glades, acquiring valuable beast cores. Reynolds was certain he wouldn't have settled down so quickly if not for a certain incident. He told little Art a lot about the adventurer's life, hoping to instill in him an interest. Reynolds worried that his son might never awaken, but he was ready to be proud of him either way. He explained that when enhancers awaken, they create a repulsive force around themselves, while spellcasters create a mana vacuum, and he boasted that upon his awakening at age 12, he floated in the air for several minutes. One afternoon, while planning Art's training, Reynolds witnessed a powerful explosion that destroyed 3/4 of the house. Panicked, he rushed to the epicenter and discovered his 3-year-old son levitating in the center of the crater, trapped in a translucent barrier. Arthur awoke incredibly early. Reynolds, shocked, fell to his knees, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Alice, who had run up behind him, was also shocked by what she saw. Upon awakening, Arthur felt wonderful as he explored his new mana core. He was interrupted by his mother, who tearfully embraced him, while his father, kneeling, smiled weakly. Looking around, Arthur was horrified to discover that most of the house had been destroyed. He immediately assumed an enemy attack, but his father explained that it was the result of his awakening. Arthur apologized for the damage, but his parents, especially the delighted Reynolds, were only delighted by his incredible talent. The family decided to keep Arthur's awakening a secret. With the help of Reynolds' former comrades in the Twin Horns Squad, the house was quickly restored. For his 3rd birthday, Arthur received a wooden sword and a black cake. He learned that birthday celebrations here don't begin until the age of 3. His mother began teaching him reading and writing, and his father taught him the basics of mana manipulation and physical training. Arthur, feigning prowess, quickly mastered everything, and in his free time he studied books on magic in the library, simultaneously meditating to condense his core. He learned that a mage's power is determined by the color of their mana core, from black to white, and that there are 2 main types of mages: augmenters, who strengthen their bodies, and emitters, who cast spells. Each type has its limitations, and attempting to master both is considered ineffective. Arthur also discovered that his mother was a rare emitter healer. A year after his awakening, Reynolds announced at dinner that it was time to find Arthur a professional mentor, as their own knowledge was no longer sufficient. Alice was against it, considering her son too young to leave home. An argument broke out between the couple. Arthur, observing this and playing war with his food, proposed a compromise. First, meet with potential mentors and undergo an official vetting process, and then decide. His parents agreed. Preparations for the journey took a day. It turned out they'd have to travel a long way, through the Great Mountains to the teleportation gate leading to the floating academic city of Xyrus. The journey would take 3 weeks, but it would be safer in the company of former members of Reynolds' squad. Arthur took a wooden sword and 2 books with him. The group set out on wagons pulled by skitter lizards. By evening, they set up camp. Helen, curious, asked Arthur about his awakening. Adam, wanting to test the boy, challenged him to a sparring match, despite his objections about his age. During the duel, Arthur, using mana and combat techniques from his past life, which he attributed to observing his father and books, launched a series of surprise attacks. Although he ultimately lost due to the power imbalance, his skills shocked the entire group. Adam was forced to apologize, and Jasmine, intrigued, asked for an explanation of the technique. The squad members spent the rest of the night trying to replicate Arthur's maneuver. Before falling asleep, a thought flashed into his mind about the nature of the light at the end of the tunnel during his rebirth, but he quickly pushed it away. The narrative then returns to the moment of Arthur's birth. When he came to, he realized he understood the local language. He saw an elderly doctor, his mother, Alice, and his father, Reynolds, who, with tears of joy, immediately asked the newborn to say, "Daddy." Arthur appreciated his parents' pleasant appearance, a sweet, frail mother with golden hair and a charismatic father with ash-blonde hair and kind blue eyes. The first weeks of life were excruciating due to the lack of control over his body. The only benefit was breastfeeding. His hopes of having entered a pre-modern world without magic were dashed when his mother healed his scratch with a wind gust created by the movement of her hands. His parents turned out to be kind people. While walking through the town of Ashburn, which resembled a settlement, Arthur was struck by the sight of armed men as part of everyday life and the brutal lynching of a thief. His father demonstrated earthbending and his impressive combat skills, which filled him with admiration. He realized that this world was a world of magic and warriors, where strength determined status, but overall it was similar to his past world, save for technology and the presence of mana in the atmosphere. The currency consisted of copper, silver, and gold. The main difference was magic. In his past life, Arthur, then King Grey, used internal ki energy, but here mages absorb external mana. Arthur hoped his experience manipulating ki would give him an advantage. While studying a book on magic, he learned that mages are divided into augmenters, who strengthen their bodies, and emitters, who cast spells. Each type has its limitations, and attempting to master both is considered ineffective. Arthur also discovered that his mother was a rare emitter healer. At the age of 2, Arthur learned to crawl and made his way to the family library, where he began studying the encyclopedia. He learned that the world of Dickaten was technologically backward, with a monarchy, but no mention of other continents. He was shocked by the brutality of the morals. The murder of a thief on the street was considered justified. His name was Arthur, Art Leywin, and he inherited traits from both his parents. Reynolds, a former B-class adventurer, told his son stories of his adventures and meeting Alice in the guild. Arthur devoted his limited childhood time to trying to gather the mana scattered throughout his body into a core, a task that was incredibly difficult. His childhood was complicated by his father's overactive games and his mother's rapturous attention. He deliberately spoke in simple phrases, and his first word, "Mama," delighted Alice and aroused jealousy in Reynolds. Alice considered Arthur the most charming child, but she tried not to spoil him. She wanted to be a strict mother to counteract the influence of the carefree Reynolds. She was worried that Arthur was constantly crawling into the library instead of playing with his toys. To improve his development, she began taking him out into town more often. She fondly recalled meeting Reynolds at the Walden Adventurers Guild, where she worked as a healer. His awkwardness and puppy-like delight melted her heart. Alice was glad her husband had abandoned the dangerous profession of adventurer after that incident and become a city guard. She was disconcerted by the periods when Arthur sat motionless with his eyes closed, meditating. But since these moments didn't last long and he seemed happy afterwards, she calmed. His embarrassment during diaper changes seemed strange but endearing. The victory that his first word was "Mama" and not "Dada" brought her particular joy. For 2 years before his awakening, Arthur steadily but slowly gathered mana particles into his core, using knowledge from his past life. This gave him a huge advantage over his peers. His days consisted of training, reading, and trying to avoid his parents' suspicions or excessive attention, his father's tossing him around, and his mother's hungry glances. He deliberately simplified his speech. These years of hard work were crowned with success. He gathered all the mana in his solar plexus and began the process of finally condensing it into a core. It was at this moment that the explosion occurred, marking his early awakening.